section on page Kufin Gimel. Doesn't get any easier. It's one thing to ask a question, which is also quite tricky, but then to understand the answer, it's a different story.
From strength to strength.
Huh?
From strength to strength.
All right, so again, the question we're dealing with, there's a principle of a makif. Within the principle of makif, there are two basic principles, makif proti and makif kloli. Makif kloli means a makif that provides a spirit for an entire reality. We already discussed extensively the importance of the makif. The makif is what gives all its content a superior principle, a value, a meaning, and explains why all these things are there. So you say a human being is a human being, that explains why all these parts, all 613 units in a human being fit into and explain what they're doing. And in this makif, which is called makif hakloli, there are two madrigas. You could say, in very simple terms, the conceptual madriga and the factual madriga. And this is called here in the Maimon, here Tato and here Eloi. So the Rebbe asked that we have to understand the effect of these two makif kloli levels upon the world. And the difference between the effect that these two makif kloli have upon the world. We already discussed it with Rishonim and so forth, just very briefly so that we can delve into it as we're going forward. The human being, as mentioned all the time, was conceptualized before being created. Not like all other creatures in the world. Were created directly. Not to be living beasts. A living beast is a living beast because he runs around in the wild. And all he is what he is. He eats grass or eats each other. The human being, as the Torah presents it, is He is introducing the data at the planning stage. I'd like we should understand the significance of this. Why did Taylor spend time telling us what the planning is? This is what he was creating. But this is not how the Torah presents it. What is the significance of the fact that he was in the planning stage? Clearly, there's a significance why the Torah describes it, this stage. The planning stage points out that his significance is way beyond his factual effect. Human being puts order in the whole world. That's a factual effect. The planning stage has a different message. You know, this world has a human being. And that's the purpose for the whole creation. This is the implication, the fact that the Torah tells us the human being from the planning stage. So let us make man. The reason let us make man is not because the world is falling apart. The animals can do their thing. But the world is such a disparate and such great presence. We fail to recognize this greatness unless we have something that incorporates this whole greatness into a single unit. They're fish and fowl and roaming beasts. These are all separate creatures. They don't know each other at all. They don't even know that they constitute one world. Each one is in its own abode. After this was in place, the Rebbe says, we have to make a man who will express and represent the principal significance of all these things together. This is exactly how the Torah presents a human being. Let us make man, and he will rule the fish and the fowl and the animals. What is the fish lacking? This rulership of man, or the fowl, or the animals? Nothing at all. Each one does his own thing, and he can continue without on end. But you're missing the whole point. All this is all part of one reality, of one world. Each one of these adds a richness, a certain angle to the world. This you will miss completely. Unless you have man who incorporates all the aspects, then you will begin to understand. Then that will reveal what the world is about. This presence of man upon the world, his effect upon the world, which brings to the forefront or reveals, so to speak, the richness in the world, as you pointed out, exists on two levels. And these are on the level where factually he is actually establishing the order in the world. And it exists on the higher level, on the conceptual level. Both of these aspects have an effect upon the world. In simple terms, if you want to learn it, have an effect upon the world. It reveals the richness and the greatness of the world because of both of these levels of makif. If you see the world, all the animals doing their own thing, and there's no coordination, there's no cooperation, there's no meaning of their being in the same world, that demands some kind of a unifying element. This is the afterthought. This is when they're actually destroying the world that was created for them, because they're each pulling in different directions. You need something that puts them in order. This is a makif kloli after the fact. Then there's a makif kloli before the fact. This makif kloli principle actually was preconceived before its need has been clearly identified. It didn't come from a need perspective. It came from a conceptual perspective, because it is revealing something as a divine statement. This is the pshat, this is the two makif kloli. And the Rebbe says we need to understand the difference, their effect upon the world of these two levels of makif kloli. I hate to stay on the introduction too long, because we have discussed it, but nonetheless, I want that we should sense what we're getting into. We can readily see the benefit and the effect of the makif after the fact. But to project it and to conceive its presence, that is speaking of this makif from a completely different vantage point. Let me put it bluntly. It's one thing to have a perfect world. It's quite another to have a godly world. To recognize that this world is a divine creation. And to identify that divine element as the purpose, as the center of this world. Loi signoi, don't steal, don't kill, and so forth. Oh, this is obviously true, that's a terrible thing to do in the world. No, but don't steal because there's God. That's a completely different statement. That gives the world a superior presence. Don't steal not because of the consequence of theft, of the negative consequence. Don't steal because it's a violation of its reality. That's a completely different effect. These are the two makif, and the Rebbe says we have to focus in and identify the difference of how they affect the world. As we discussed already in great detail, the Misholim and all that, a world exactly the way it is, and also organized properly, without this supreme perception of what unites everything, it would be a different world. Without the conceptually preconceived element, it would be a different world. Okay, let's continue. Okay, the last section on page Kuf Nun Gimel. Behold. I mentioned many times in Vehine, Begim's most introductory sections in Chassidus. Behold. Behold means look at it with your eyes, which means look at it from the Chochmah level. Because I cannot present it to you by first describing it and giving to you a build-up presentation. Before you build it up, you have to see that what are we talking about. If someone were to ask you, tell me the significance and meaning of a table, it's a simple thing. Without having a demonstration, here, look at it, behold, this is the table, look at these people sitting around it. You will never be able to present to him the spirit and the richness of what a table is. You can tell him how it's made, what its pieces are, but not what it represents in human life. And this is what the Vehine represents. Vehine means, I'm going to explain to you, but first open your mind to try to see what I'm talking about. How do you see? I'm not there. The answer is yes, you are there. This is being explained to someone who has an neshama. The neshama knows the divine truth of the creation, the divine significance of the creation. You have to bring this entire richness that we're given to play and to focus in order to understand these few words. Peulas hamakiv the tilatator. The peula, the effect of the makiv, of the level that's called tilatator, the lower purity, the lower divine aspect, which is, as we said already before, this is already when the divine view of the world is after the tzimtzum, which means the world has already been conceptualized. It is not the way it is in its inception, in its origin. Why would God create a world? That is not in Tiratator. It is also all-encompassing, but this is on the lower. This is where world already demands that to be encompassed. The Hainu, which is Bechinas Machshava Hagduma Diak. In terms of the identity of the Madrige, Tiratator is the Makif Bechinas Machshava Hagduma Diak. The pristine thought of Ak, as we already explained when we first came to this. Machshava, thought, should not be confused, misunderstood that machshava and intellect are one thing. They are absolutely not. Intellect is an neshama element. Machshava, thought, is, as an neshama is in the guf. It's an applied intellect. And this is this maki b'tirat Torah is referring to is pointing to that which is called machshava, but it's called machshava hagduma. Machshava hagduma means the pristine, the initial thought of Adam Kadmon, of the pristine Adam when he was first conceptualized. Then already there was in machshava, and this machshava over there is keduma. Keduma means pre-thought, not a machshava that comes after the fact and you have to figure out what you're looking at. It's a projected thought.
So who had that machshava? Udam Kadmon?
Yeah, Udam Kadmon. This is Madriga of Udam Kadmon.
But Kedima doesn't mean it was always there.
I'm sorry?
Kedima doesn't mean it was always there.
Yes and no. The truth is, it was not there. Until the tzimtzum, it wasn't there. But it was there even before the tzimtzum.
Udam Kadmon is before the tzimtzum.
No, Udam Kadmon is after the tzimtzum.
Was it before that Silas, I think. Udam Kadmon.
It's all after the tzimtzum. There's no Adam before the tzimtzum. So, to answer your question, Machshava Hakduma means that it was always there. It was always there, but not in the form of Machshava. In order, Machshava is the pshat, as we explained in the last time. Machshava means that you have something to think about. That's what the difference between intellect and thought. The intellect is a flow from the neshama. It has its own life base. This is the difference between the human being and all the other creatures in the world. The animals go around and they find their prey. And they also build nests. And they also protect their turf. So what's wrong? They're quite smart. All of that activity is based on their own presence, existence. There is not a concept, an existence, a concept of beyond my own existence. Like I said, it said a very, very simple thing. It said, in the example of the business, we have a company that builds and produces a very important thing. It builds ships, it builds airplanes, cars, whatever, all very important things. And everyone, and it has a whole structure of management and so forth. On top of it, there is the one who conceptualized this. This is the chairman of the board. He conceptualized what the difference between me, but the way he sees it and the way I. So he said that conceptually, the chairman of the board is the one who preconceived, who projected, who he decided to create it from scratch. Why? What demanded it? Because this would complement the world. He was not even involved in building a company. So he has a completely different view, a completely different orientation, base. There's nothing there. If there's nothing there, so what are you so concerned? I want to show what the world is. The world can go on without it, but I want to show what the world is.
Someone is asking about the conference.
I'm sorry?
Someone is asking to listen. Did you log in?
I did. Okay, let me. Okay. Oh shucks. Okay, yeah. Again, I thought I did log in. Here.
IDT Connect. Please enter your conference ID. Welcome.
Disconnected.
Thank you. You are now entering the conference room. To exit the conference room, press **. For help, press *9. For participant number 1.
Okay. Now it's there.
So the answer was that
Excuse me?
so the answer was that Kadmon means that the concept was there, but not in Machshava.
Right. Kadmon, that's right. The first stage of Machshava
It was explained also what Machshava is.
Okay. Okay, we started yes, but we already discussed it. Machshava is not to be confused with seichel. Seichel is based and it's brought to it's maintained by a living neshama. The reason it makes sense is because the neshama is there, not because you have shown the proofs of it. And once it comes into thought, this is when you are revealing it in a practical, in a presence. There's a well-known expression. A kop kemenish aruf shtel. In other words, you can explain things because you can explain only machshava level, but you cannot give somebody seichel. So what's the point? The point is, if you make him think along these lines, that will arouse, and he will then go back and say, "Oh yeah, I see it in my seichel."
Vahina.
Huh?
Vahina.
Vahina. If he refuses to go there, and he only wants to accept what you are giving him, he will always remain the same in the same place. This is why, you're always thinking. The Talmud is not just a Talmud listening to words of the Rav. The Talmud has to get involved in the thought process of the Rav. If he is not involved, then he's not getting the message that the Rav is giving him. Because there's no way to produce a seichel. You can only give the machshava part of it. The seichel has to come from the person, and it's given by Meibashu to everyone.
So, but what does it mean that has to get the thought process of the Rav to get to my cycle?
So again?
What does it mean you have to get to the Rav's thought process? What will that help to bring out the Talmud cycle?
You've never seen a table before. And I call you and says, listen, human beings live like this. In a human being's home, there's a table. And here's what the function of the table is. And here's where it stands. And he uses the table, doesn't sleep on it, doesn't sit on it. He sits around it. And when you give him all that, this is all the thought process. And he thinks, why is that? What's behind that? If he doesn't think what's behind that, he just gets the point of information. But if he is with you, you're trying to display, to demonstrate something to you. You're saying it to him, not to an animal, because he's a human being too. So he starts thinking, yes, why would I have a table? I was not raised that way, but I appreciate it. Why do I appreciate it? I appreciate it because I have an intellect deeper than that which is given to me in machshava, in the thought process. That is what brings out his seichel. If he does not go there, if he only takes the words that is being taught to him, he's going to be remain the same lifeless idiot as was before. We can readily identify the difference between somebody imitating a proper behavior or somebody who behaves properly. This is hiratato. This is the lower level of the makif. The lower level of the makif means it is also a makif. And it also brings out the overall significance of what is encompassed therein. But it's on the machshava level. Since it's a machshava level,
So, machshava hakduma da'ak, in essence, is tirat ilah.
hiratato.
So that's because you keep on saying that tirat ilah is already similar to the chairman of the board, but the chairman of the board is
No. What good Chairman of the board before he became chairman. What enticed him to go and start this company? What was in his mind? As I said, he has in mind, like I said, an example, he has in mind to build the world, not another company at all.
But it's not exactly that way.
It's not exactly
I don't
our
think
world, right? Okay, projection.
So you're saying in a case that okay.
The gentleman
to be
here
in
says, huh?
I'm sorry. Yes.
He says that there are people like that.
Yeah. No, I've met several CEOs and chairmen of boards who believe that their company should have a greater impact on the world. There's a company, for instance, here in New York City called Jumpstart. Jumpstart, half the time they are doing the tech business, and half the time the company is doing pro bono work, helping other companies figure out how to improve themselves. And they do it pro bono. Because they want other companies to learn how to think better and help their people. So their mission is to help the world.
Believe
I'm
it?
calling Jumpstart tomorrow.
Believe it? Huh?
I'm calling Jumpstart tomorrow.
It's okay. No, Harvard
Believe it?
wrote studies on 3 such kind of companies, and there are many throughout the world. But the chairman of the board have not just a vision of what the company's bottom line profit will be, but what its impact on the world will be. So I'm sharing with you. I know the CEO intimately. I know the officers. I've worked with them in the past, and they're not the only one. One of my professors at Harvard wrote a book on 3 such companies. I can share with you.